I would like to go ahead and call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Members present are myself, Vice Chairman Rose, Ms. King, and Ms. Kuzar. The time is 7:10. We were regularly scheduled at 6 o'clock, but had a meeting run over before this. Our first item on our agenda is public comment. If you have any items pertaining to finance and policy, now will be the time to publicly speak. I don't see anyone running down the aisle. So our next item is going to be reading and approval of minutes. What do I hear on notes?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve as submitted the meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We didn't do discussion. I know, Ms. King.
I know, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Next item are going to be reports and communications from city officers. Mr. Madden, you're up first for a budget review. You're 6 days in. Surely you haven't blown it yet.
No, we're early on in the budget. I did want to bring to attention to council one item. Our installment purchase revenue bond that has been privately placed with Truist Bank. The city, there in the capital improvement program, there are two items that were improvements to City Hall that council approved. One is an upgrade to our audio visual here in council chambers. The second is overall security at City Hall. Those items will need to be paid for out of the IPRB, the bond proceeds from the installment purchase revenue bond. And so I just want to make sure council was aware of that. That means that there will be funding in the CIP that council approved for those items, but they were funded out of the general fund, not out of the bond proceeds. So that funding is there. It will go into a general fund if it's fund balance if it's not used. I just wanted to make sure council was aware of that. And that concludes my report, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Do we have any questions from Mr. Madden regarding that? Ms. King?
No questions.
Okay, Ms. Abercrombie is not in. She's out of town, so we do have Mr. Mark Putnam, our HR director. Mr. Putnam, could you proceed with your report?
Yes, Mark, if you have any items to report.
Oh, I'm sorry, I could not hear. No, not really. Just remind council that we have our interviews this Friday. And I will send out a schedule of those, and hopefully you all have the resumes. If you do not, just let me know and I'll make sure we get you those.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. You're referring to the vacant fire chief's seat, correct?
Correct.
Any questions for Mr. Putnam while we have him from the committee? Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Putnam. Unfinished business. There was none on the agenda. Our new business item was the resolution that was just adopted out of committee of the whole. So we actually have no new business. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Okay. Moving on, our next item is public comment. Hearing none, committee concerns. Very good. What do I hear on adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't say that, did I?
He is. I'm moving him over to panelist right now. Okay. He's here.
I'd like to call the, Recreation Committee meeting of July 6, 2020 to order. It's approximately 7:15 p.m. Committee members present, Mr. Taft Matney, Mr. Michael Reynolds, myself, Dale Black, City Administrator, Mr. Brandon Madden, and Interim Recreation Director, Mr. Bart Kumalander. Have any public comment at this time? Hearing none, we'll, have a place it toward the end of this meeting for another public comment if anyone desires to speak. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is reading and approval of the minutes of the June 1st, 2020 committee meeting. What do I hear on those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Got a motion of Mr. Reynolds that we approve the minutes of the June 1st, 2020 as submitted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Matney. Any discussion? Additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. They stand approved as distributed. Report communication from city officers. Department reports, Interim Director, Mr. Bart Kumalander. Bart, do you have anything you want to discuss with this committee?
No, sir. Everything's going good. Mr. Black, everything's rolling along pretty good with the sports and the sports center, and we're doing good. Should be everything in our weekly report, sir.
Thank you, Bart. I'd just like to reiterate again, I think we've stated this every meeting since we've had the corona outbreak and all, about what a great job that the staff and all is doing at the sports center and all the recreation programs throughout the city with Willie and Andre and Landon, everyone of some of the staff over there that handles both of these projects. So just wanted to pass on our appreciation to these folks again. And as well as you appreciate the good job y'all done.
Thank you, Mr. Black, and I'll pass that along to the staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Matt, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, sir, Chairman, I do not.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, moving right along, the next item is the unfinished business, and this is the door at the back of the sports center, the walking trail. I would like, since we've got some more information, but I think we still need some more information and more discussion. But if it pleases the committee, I would like to just keep this in committee until next month, and then maybe we'll have something concrete. If not, we'll do something with them.
Second.
I've got a motion, Mr. Reynolds, so we keep this in committee. Second, Mr. Mackey, any discussion? All in favor of keeping it in committee until a future date when we get all of the irons in the fire and everything to make sure what we're doing. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll leave that in committee. Next item is new business. The city shelter rental prices. This is on page 911 of your handout. Anyone want to discuss this, Bart or Mr. Madden?
I'll defer to Interim Director Kumalander.
Yes, sir, Mr. Black. We called a couple places about our shelter, what to charge, and I think you should have that in your packet. The other item too is we haven't gone up on the other picnic shelters in quite some time. We can leave those the way we have them now, if y'all would like. But we are getting numerous phone calls on the rentals of the shelters on the cultural center grounds or on the sports center ground on our side. So I'm getting some direction from yourself and council what we should charge.
Committee want to jump in on this? I have a couple of questions. If you have any concerns or questions or anything you'd like to ask Mr. Kumalander on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just kind of looking at it. I definitely think that the shelter on City Center Drive, it is a premium facility. and probably needs to be adjusted, in terms of those rental rates, and I'm wondering, if $100 is really enough, especially as I look at neighboring jurisdictions, and what they charge for full-day rentals of similar shelters. I think that what we offer is superior to some of the other facilities that, have been showed as comparable. I think even if we looked at 150, we're still, at a lower cost than others in the market, and providing a superior product.
Reynolds, you have any comments, thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as I look at it, I tend to agree with Mr. Matney on this, but one of the things I'd like us to do is look at all the shelters and kind of reassess every one of them, not piecemeal this. Let's take a look at all of them and see if we're still in line with every shelter that would be rentable. And then following that up with has there ever been a policy to look at having a different fee schedule for in-city and out-of-city rentals? I know we have that obviously with our rec center and other rec programs, but would that be something the council would consider as we move forward with our shelters as well?
I personally don't have a problem with charging more for out of city, because the people within the city limits is one that's, paid for the facilities in the beginning, so I think the ones outside that want to come in and use them, there should be a difference of price, I mean, like you say, with our sports center programs.
Agreed.
But I have no problem with that. Couple things that I had, Bart, maybe you can answer these. Say if someone rented the shelter over there, okay, and we have beach and Friday or some other activity going on, is that gonna restrict the other participants of beaching and Friday and all from using the restroom facilities and the shelter at that time, or how are we gonna say you got it rented, or we gonna not rent it on those days, or how would we handle that? Do you have any ideas?
Yes, sir, Mr. Black. I will try to get the dates, from the culture center when they would have their events, and I would not book that because if I remember correctly, that's the reason we put one of the bathrooms out there, so we could, use that facility as far as bathrooms, so we wouldn't have to use porta johns. So we would try not to book it when we have beach and Fridays, on that Friday night or whenever they'll have an event over there. Historically, Van Brawl would he'll have that a year out before we would book it. If that will answer your question.
Yeah, that was the one concern I had. So if I went over there and rented the shelter for an activity for family or a group or whatever, then it happened to be on the same day as the beach and the Friday. And then how you gonna tell the people they can't come in and use those facilities? I'll have it rented, so it's mine, and you can't come in. I mean, is it gonna cause any controversy? Plus the rental of the shelter, that wouldn't include the playgrounds also, because there again, you got other people that are using the playgrounds at the same time that somebody had the shelter in it. So we need to just make it clear, in my opinion, whatever we do, that we know the difference between renting on those dates, and if it happens to fall on the same date, that understand they do not get the full use of the, playground equipment all with the rental of the shelter. And that's just some thoughts that I had. Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir.
Mr. Reynolds had something, Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other quick question, Bart. What is Mr. Cumlander, what is the process for renting a facility? Does a individual call the sports center? Is there a way to block it out online and do it that way, or have we considered doing something like that?
Well, that's something we can do, Mr. Reynolds. We can, put it online, but right now, you're calling in. Let's say if the Cumberlanders want for next weekend or 2 weekends away from now, we would just call in and reserve it, and they will come in and fill out some paperwork. And what we'll do is give them a yellow card, lets them know that they have it reserved in case someone just shows up and want to use the facility. But they'll have that rental card to let them know that they have the spot that day, that afternoon. If that's answering the question.
It does. I think moving forward, if we believe our product is superior, we ought to probably do what we can to make it as easy and accessible as possible to rent. So looking at options to be able to block it off online, pay for it online, and do all this online would be something I would be in favor of. At least looking at programs of the how and why to make that an option.
For sure, yes, sir. We can do that. We can look into that.
Thank you, Mr. Cumlander. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Matt, you got anything else?
No, sir, I think where we are is, that Mr. Reynolds was suggesting that we hold this on the floor, for additional, information, so that we can look at all of the shelters, at all of the parks. So when he makes that motion, I've got no problem seconding it.
I don't have a problem now. I think we need to, I don't think we visited the rental cost on these and including, I think, the gym at the senior center. I don't think that has been visited in several years, so we probably need to update all of our rental facilities that we do offer for rent for different entities. So, see if they're in line today with the cost factor. And another thing, if we rent the shelter for, say, the first part of the day, then you got somebody coming in the second part of the day, and we're gonna have to make arrangements during the coronavirus and all this to make sure that it's sanitized and the trash and all is taken care of before the next group shows up.
So moved.
Second.
Your motion was to hold this on the
Hold this on
committee.
the floor in committee to get more information on looking at updating all the fee structures.
Okay, got a motion from Mr. Reynolds, that we hold this in committee till we get a, fee structure on updating all the rental facilities within the city. Got a second, Mr. Manning?
Yes, sir.
I got a second. Any more discussion on this? All in favor of holding in committee till we get, further information on the cost factors and everything else compared, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. All right, the next item is, designating playground and shelter scenic center drive as a park. And this is on pages 12 through 17 of your handout. Bart, you want to, I think you discussed this with me a couple times, and, you want to head this off, or Mr. Madden, either one?
I'll defer to,
Shelter and playground and
Yeah.
city center drive as a city park.
yeah, I'll defer to Director Cumberlander.
Yes. Yes, sir. What we just need some guidance from council, Mr. Blank, is really when we rent that shelter out, is an address and what we're exactly gonna call that, those two picnic shelters in that area. If we do start renting that out, which I think we are, we just, as staff, just need to get some direction from council, what direction we wanna go with, what are we gonna call that facility?
And just to add to what to Director Cumberlander presented, designating that area that's outlined in your agenda packet in red, which is the new playground shelter, and then the smaller shelter. Designating that as a park does a couple of things. In addition to what Mr. Cumberlander mentioned, it also allows us to enforce our park rules, which have standard hours of operation, where folks can be there on those facilities or within that facility. And it also provides a level of standardization of how we treat our playgrounds and our shelters. Because if it remains as it is, it will be treated differently than our other playgrounds and our shelters as it relates to our city ordinances.
So there again, I'm looking at the outline of red, the whole project, the whole property here. If we designate this as a park, and there again, if we have another event, Beach and Friday and all, the park's only closed at what time, Bart?
The other parts close at 10 p.m.
Okay, so Beach and Friday normally goes to what, 10?
It does. Or if it goes later, I would have discretion as the administrator to amend those as needed.
And I'm just looking at it, trying to figure all avenues before we put something in place, and then we got to change it as soon as we get it in there. So, I don't have a problem, like I said, if we designate it as a city park, then is that gonna fall in line with the rest of the parks and all the dogs and all that stuff. There again, you got dual activities going on over. The only thing you got separating is the street, the city center drive, from a park to the culture center property. So you got two properties there across the street from each other, which we don't have in any of the other facilities now.
Mhm.
I want to make sure we've got everything before we do something. We've got it all taken care of if we can.
Yeah, it would, if council designated this as a park, then all of the park rules would apply to this area, or any other area council wants to designate.
Man,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would there be, could we come up with a separate type of designation for this area? Because as the chairman said, we're dealing with dogs, you're dealing with the alcohol situation, that would come from Beach and Fridays or the farmer's market as has been done in the past, the barbecue festival. When you have those dual activities sharing the contiguous property line, I don't know how some of those things are going to be enforceable from a realistic point of view, but I also don't understand how we're going to be able to tell people, it's fine for you to do this on this side, but you can't do it on this side. Can we come up with a separate designation that would allow us to do the park things that we need to do and treat it as such with the hours of operation and with the maintenance that we do with the park, but still allow for the fact that it's a different location with sometimes different uses going on in an adjacent manner?
Yes, I think I would note that in our ordinances, as it relates to that question, there is some discretion that I would have for things such as Beach and Fridays or events that we have, because City Center Drive is a public street.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is some discretion there that I would have, and I would encourage council to consider that. But we definitely can go back and see if there's a second type of designation that we can put in our ordinance or designate this park as, with some caveats or some conditions, because this is unique to the city's operation. So yes, we can.
I think I'd feel more comfortable doing that, Mr. Chairman.
because when you get to Beach and Friday and things where they do serve alcohol, you're not allowed in any of the other parks, Florida alcohol. You got it over there, and the only thing got separated is City Center Drive, and people, yourself, have been on both sides of City Center and all over City Center, and they might have a wine or something in their hand. So, it's good in one location, but it's not good in the other locations throughout the city. So,
Mr. Chairman, if they have a wine in their hand sliding down the slide, we got a bigger issue, right?
well, yeah, but
Don't knock it.
but that's just something that I was thinking about when I read over this. How we gonna distinguish that you got to stay over here because this is the culture center and this over here is the park, and we're not allowing this in the park. But people don't know the difference between the park and the culture center. So.
No, I would agree. I think it takes some more thought to it. I appreciate your leadership there.
Then if it pleases the chair, I move that we hold this on the floor while staff looks for additional options to modify the park designation or the playground and shelter designation at City Center Drive.
Well, even if we had to name it something other than a park, that would distinguish. You'd have your other parks, but if this was designated as something, got the same activities, but don't call it a park, and I think that would might not eliminate some of the things with the dogs and the alcohol and things of this nature. That's just a thought. But if you put it as parking, then that's gonna cover all the parks within the city. So just a thought. Like I say, I think we'll just leave it in committee also and just get some more ideas from council's input. Back to Mr. Madden, Mr. Cumlander, see if we can come up with a compromise on all this.
All right, move we hold it in committee.
I'll second.
I've got a motion, Mr. Madden, we leave this in committee, seconded by Mr. Reynolds. Any further discussion? Hearing that, all in favor of leaving the committee till we get all of our stuff lined up and everything before we do any further changes in naming this. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So this also will stay. So right now we're loading up the next committee meetings or so that's fine. But we've got to do it right, and I have to revisit it. All righty, that's all I see under new business. The next item is the, public comment. You got any public comments from anyone? Hearing none, the next item is, committee concerns. You got any committee concerns from committee members? Hearing none, what I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Got a motion to adjourn. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approximately, 7:37 PM, so appreciate everyone's participation in that. That's all we got in recreation. Next one is, item is the building code committee.
Okay, this is the building codes committee. It's approximately 7:42. Sorry, 7:37. I call this committee to order. Is there any public comment? Okay, I guess I should say who all's here. Kath Matney, Dale Black, myself, Diane Kuzma, our city administrator, Mr. Madden. And is David Durov?
Yes, he's joining us virtually.
I'm sorry?
He's joining us virtually.
Okay, he's joining us virtually. Okay, so what do I hear on the reading and approval of minutes?
Move to accept it as distributed.
Second.
Alright, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alright, reports or communications from the city officers, do you have anything, Mr. Madden?
Madam Chairman, I do not.
Okay, Mr. Deerall?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Alright, the next item is unfinished business, and there is none. Then we have new business, which is an ordinance to amend Article 10 of the City of Mauldin zoning ordinance by establishing special standards and definitions for small box variety stores and light businesses, and to establish the zoning districts for which they can locate. Mr. Deerall, do you want to speak on this?
So this ordinance is coming to you by way of the Planning Commission. They have held a public hearing on this ordinance on June 23rd. There were 3 public comments provided. Or I should say 2 in opposition, 1 in favor. This ordinance, what it does is it imposes standards for small box variety stores. The main standard is that they will be required to be separated, or I should say any new stores will be required to be separated by a distance of 1 mile from any existing store, whether that existing store is inside or outside the city limits of Mauldin. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the ordinance as presented.
Thank you. As you know, there was a public hearing, and the attorney for Dollar General was in opposition of the ordinance. Mr. Westberg, who's the district manager of Andy Video, spoke, and he was also in opposition. And Mr. Trailing spoke in favor of the ordinance. So do I hear a motion to forward this to city council for consideration?
Madam Chair, I move to forward this to full council with recommendation of approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Madam Chairman, this been, passed through the legal department, Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
they've done the proofreading and put their blessings on it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I do have I was doing some research, and so here's what I found out, and these are excerpts, and I would like to just read them real quick. One is an article by Alex McGillis. It was in the New Yorker on June the 29th, 2020. The title is The True Cost of Dollar Stores. So the expert is, the growing signs of discount chains have become indicators of neglect, markers of a geography of the places that the country is written off. But these factors are not sufficient to explain the trend. The chain's owners have done little to maintain order in the stores, which tend to be thinly staffed and exist in a state of physical disarray. The chain's executives are candid about what is driving their growth: widening income inequality and the decline of many city neighborhoods and entire swaths of the country. Todd Bezos, the CEO of Dollar General, said to the Wall Street Journal in 2017, "The economy is continuing to create more of our core customer." Because dollar stores are heavily concentrated in poor towns and neighborhoods, many middle and upper middle class consumers are unaware of their ubiquity or of the frequency of armed robberies and shootings. The stores undercut traditional grocery stores by having few employees, often only 3 per store, and paying them little. While dollar stores sometimes fill a need in cash-strapped communities, growing evidence suggests these stores are not merely a byproduct of economic distress. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance reported they are the cause of it. There was another article written by Ann Kane of the Business Insider, also on June 29th, 2020. Dollar stores have seen a wave of violent crime, even as the discount retailers thrived during the coronavirus. Recently, chains like Dollar General have posted excellent sales as shoppers seek out deals amid the coronavirus pandemic. The news outlets, including CNN and ProPublica, have reported that companies like Dollar General and Dollar Tree are prime targets when it comes to robberies and violent crime. A number of factors are likely contributing to the trend of violence at the discount chains. ProPublica's Alex McGillis reported that Dollar General's major expansion across the country and presence in high-crime neighborhoods both put dollar stores at risk. Middle Georgia State University criminal justice professor Jeff Tarver told GBP Radio that they know they're not going to be getting a lot of money. It's just the convenience of being able to get in and get out quickly and have a couple of dollars in your pocket. The result is a deadly wave of retail crime. According to ProPublica, the gun violence archive found that there have been 50 gun deaths resulting from violent incidents at both Family Dollar or Dollar General since 2017. CNN reported that 6 Dollar General employees have died in store robberies since 2016. One of my neighbors recently witnessed a theft at the dollar store in Mauldin on the day it opened. We have 3 dollar stores in Mauldin, and they're within 2 miles of the city center. There are also 6 other dollar stores within 5 miles that are outside of the city. So miles from City Hall range from 2.82 miles to 4.93 miles. So in my opinion, we're not inconveniencing our residents by saying no to more dollar stores, aka the small box variety stores, as there are 9 within a 5-mile radius. Mauldin has a vision to create a city we can all be proud of. Throughout my campaigning, the citizens of Mauldin have consistently stated that they want more nice restaurants and retails like Target, etc., and less dollar stores. So that was just some of the research that I did. So all in favor of sending this to full council for consideration, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 3 to nothing. Then we have next on our new business is the Building and Zoning Board of Appeals appointments. And on pages 15 through 19, we have the applications for appointment. Scott Crosby and Brian Patton.
Madam Chairperson, I would like personally, since we didn't have the two applicants in this, and in light of everything we've got going on, I would like to see us, thoroughly advertise this and see if we can get some more individuals involved, in this, because the only thing we've got is two applicants to pick from, and we got two vacant slots. So, I mean, I would like to, open it up and really advertise and make sure that everybody gets a shot at it that wants to, and then maybe we get 2 or 3 more names or something, and council can pick from those instead of just this is all you got to choose from is these two. So, nothing wrong with the two individuals. I know one of them, but I don't know the other one.
I agree with Mr. Black on that.
Okay.
So I'd like to just keep it, keep advertising until because I don't think there's any rush on filling these two vacancies on the board of appeals at this time, and they don't meet that often, so I'd like to just,
Mr. Madden, they can still make a quorum with the vacancies, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Mr. Deerhall?
Yes, that's correct. They can still make a quorum.
Okay.
so I'd like to move that we, keep advertising this and hold this before we send it to council, we get some more applicants coming into it, because right now we've got two candidates, and we got 2 slots. So,
Second.
So.
Okay, all right. Any discussions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the ayes have it. Any public comment? Hearing none, committee concerns?
I have none, I'm sure.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Next one is, economic development.
And this meeting is adjourned.
All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and call the EPD committee to order, 7:46 PM here on June 6th, present. Me, Ms. Kuzner, Mayor, Mr. Broad moving up to the front row, a wonderful city administrator sitting next to me. We're all here, singing Kumbaya is good. All right, what do I hear on reading and approval of minutes from June 1st?
I make the motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
We have a motion, is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Minutes are approved as presented. Department reports, Mr. Broad.
Thank you, Councilman Matney, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Administrator. We continue to work hard on development for the city. We've had some really good opportunities come our way, and we'll continue to share those as we are allowed to by the development groups that we're working with. We hope to have some exciting news soon. Also, our budget, we're a little bit over budget. I'm teasing, we're not. We're okay right now. This one is kind of aggravating. All right, I love you guys. All right, and just to kind of update you on Beach and Fridays, I know that it's our premier summer event, and we, like everybody, hated that we have been postponing and canceling and moving events back. But in light of the governor's last action to continue to allow the emergency orders in place, the spike in cases throughout Greenville County, and then the logistics of trying to keep the bands on hold or not on hold, and staffing and those things, we elected to postpone through the month of July and look at August. We'll evaluate that mid-July, what August looks like, and hopefully, as you guys move forward on maybe some additional requirements for safety with masks and other things, we'll be able to either pull that together this year or wait till next year. So we're in good shape, I think, otherwise. So that's pretty much what I've got tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Broad? Not going
I don't have anything.
All right, so there are no questions from Mr. Rod, so still not going anywhere, because we don't have any finished business, but we start off with new business, specifically C-Fund collaboration request. Do you wanna hit that, or?
Sure,
Mr.
it's,
Madden gonna do that?
Sure, either way, I'm
Defer to
happy
Mr. Brown.
to jump on it. It's really a pretty simple request. Greenville County, with the abundance of development that the city's been fortunate to gain out on Ashmore Bridge Road and Sandy Springs Road, Hidden Lake Preserves, there's Orion Homes development that we annexed in as part of Bonnie Gray. It's a separate development from Bonnie Gray. But then the development of Bonnie Gray, and then Hidden Lake 2 on Ashmore Bridge Road, there's an abundance of concern about traffic and safety on Standing Springs Road, how it angles in to Ashmore Bridge. So the county has gone to the developer and asked them to partner with them to straighten that out. It's about a $1.2 million cost. The developer is coming to the city and asking us to participate in the funding for that. The county is going to take the project to C-Funds. We will not take the project to C-Funds, will not make any commitments. If you elect to participate in funding, that's all the city would be on the hook for is the funding amount that you would consider. I believe, if I remember, the particular development, Mark III Properties, has about $150,000 or so in funds. They're putting that up in the project. The county's going to ask C-Funds for a majority of it. I was meeting and talking with Philip Maynard, who's the owner and developer of Hidden Lake Preserve. I believe the county's going to ask him and perhaps a couple of other developments on Standing Springs Road to participate too as well. So they're trying to get everybody to kind of collaboratively come together and fix that interchange right there. So the developer's asking the city to participate with the $50,000 participation fund. So I'll leave that to you.
So $50,000 from the fund balance would be all that we're being asked for?
Yes, sir.
For this particular road project. How much additional capacity would it either allow for, or how much would it ease congestion in that area?
Well, that interchange already has a failing grade. As it stands now, it's a failing intersection, the way DOT and the county grade interchanges and intersections. So I don't know that this would make this an A section, but it certainly would improve the ability of drivers to access Standing Springs Road in a safer way. As well, I believe you see in your report too that SCDOT is planning also to put a signal, I believe, at Fort Shoals and Ashmore Bridge Road too as well. So they're going to be engaged in some other parts of the project. If you back up to Hidden Lake Preserve, they have some things that they have to do as part of their project too. I just think the impact of traffic with all these new developments on an already failing interchange is just something that they're concerned about.
I mean, there seems to be a lot here in the cost estimate for 1.2 million. That's pretty thorough.
That's the Co-Transco estimate. And it could be more than that, but again, we're not making the request, so we're not on the hook for cost overruns or any of that. And it's up to you whether you want to participate or not.
So the county is requesting that we pitch in $50,000.
Well, the developer is asking on behalf of a collaboration of, I guess, partners who are doing that. But the county is going to make the request to C-Funds, not the developer. The county.
Who has questions for Mr. Broad?
I have a question, if you don't mind, Mr.
Go right ahead, Ms. Kuzma.
So what if we don't put the 50,000 in?
Then it's all on the developer in the county. It'll be all up to them.
But they're gonna do it anyway.
I believe so. I have not been in the middle of that conversation. I know at one time the county wanted to force the developer to do the infrastructure. But it's just more, those are parameters and negotiations between developers and the county that they'll have to work out in DOT. I mean, there are certain things you can and can't do. You can't not allow people to develop their property, but you can make it difficult enough to where they either fix the problem that you created, or not say you, perhaps the county created this problem by not straightening that road out to begin with. So they have a big responsibility, in that road. But if you fund it, that's, you know, I guess they feel like since we've, you know, added a lot of development out there, you know, perhaps we should participate, but that's clearly, you know, up to you guys.
Thank you.
Mayor, you have anything?
Yes, sir, thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, I'll do in the form of a question. How do you look to our citizens and suggest we put in an additional, an amount of money, a significant amount of money, to fix something that's going to develop in the future, when they're currently handicapped going down Ashmore Bridge Road on Adams Mill Road, that belongs to the city?
Mhm.
We're doing nothing. It has no runoff on the shoulder. It's not even striped. So we can look at those citizens and talk to them about, but we gave money for a future that belongs to South Carolina DOT and the county of Greenville. And explain to them that the gas tax just went up 2 cents a gallon, July the 1st. And so DOT is collecting an additional amount of money. And so we don't get help on Adams Mill Road, Ashmore Bridge Road. We don't get help on Ashmore Bridge Road and Fowler Circle, which also comes in at an angle, which has become an additional traffic flow through Fowler Circle. We go out to Old Mill Road and turn left on Miller Road and watch children walk in the ditch or jump in the ditch while they're trying to walk to school to get up to Corn Road. I'm sorry. Yeah, Corn Road.
That's right.
To turn right to walk to high school.
Yes, sir.
But we can give $50,000 to a developer in a huge $1 million worth of development out there with future. So I need help in being able to look the citizen in the eye and say, oh, it's okay. We'll get to you. And when I had the chair of county council tell me, good ideas, probably look at it around 2040. It's tough. So I'm open to suggesting how to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I mean, I certainly understand, and I won't profess to have the answers to those multiple questions. I think what you've already done as a council and the leadership of the city by budgeting in the current budget for multiple road fixes that have not been done in the city is a step in the right direction. You guys have already, I think you can show our citizenry that we're already engaged in that process. It's something that you guys have been passionately aware of under the leadership of our city administrator to budget for that. I think that's a help and a start. Yes, should the county and the state take ownership of these projects, typically what happens, you get development, the infrastructure comes in afterwards, which is probably one reason we got a note from, I won't say who, a county council member who said not every development's a good development. Well, you know, they're trying to slow up development and they're concerned about the road infrastructure too as well. So we're in a conundrum. Do we grow? Do we add to our residential base, which adds to our opportunity for commercial retail, which we desperately struggle for? So it's a balancing act that I don't relish for you guys at all. I think it's something personally that we ought to be engaged in as we can, if we can afford it, and it's something you feel like we can afford. I think in light of the fact that you already are making a significant impact in road infrastructure this year, you know, I think we do the best we can. It's not a great answer, but you know, I think it would be smart to help if you can.
Do you anticipate us having any asks of CTC this year?
I don't have anything. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. It is very possible in this year we could, depending on some cost estimates that we're waiting on right now for a project that we could come back to.
So
but this would not, in my view, this would not impact that request because this is coming from the county, and I think we kind of all would surmise that because the county is making this request, it probably carries a lot more weight than us as a city coming in. I would think.
Additional questions for Mr. Brock? Is there a motion on this particular agenda item? Hearing none, we will move to the next one.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to recommend of staff that council approve funding of $50,000 for the Standing Springs Ashmore Bridge realignment project.
We have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor of forwarding this to council, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it goes.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, excuse me, yes. Discussion.
Never want to circumvent the,
Process of full council weighing in on this, you know, when I supported it to move it to full council, but I will reserve judgment for support of full council.
Understood. And it goes to council 3-0, which takes us now to item 6B, an emergency ordinance requiring individuals to wear face coverings in certain circumstances and matters related thereto. This item comes from me. I asked Mr. Madden to put this on the agenda, just because of where we are in the world now. You know, we're seeing roughly an average of 1,500 cases per day. Greenville County continues to be a hot spot. South Carolina itself is now on the quarantine list when we travel. You know, it used to be when somebody came here, they'd have to quarantine, self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Now we're the ones who have to quarantine. I don't want football to be taken away. And I don't want to get anybody sick, and I don't want anybody to get me sick. But while I certainly respect individual responsibility, when it comes to the businesses that are operating within the city, we need to be leaders, I think, and work with them as well and help protect their employees who are facing this day to day. So this particular ordinance would be an emergency ordinance if it passes and goes to full council. So it would require only one reading as an emergency ordinance. But it would require anybody entering a grocery store or pharmacy in the city of Mauldin to wear a face covering, whether it's this or whether it's a bandana. The term grocery store is a retail establishment that primarily sells food, but it doesn't include convenience stores. Restaurants, retail stores, salons, beauty shops, barber shops, grocery stores, and pharmacies must require their employees to wear a face covering at all times while having interaction with the public. But if you're unable to wear a face covering safely because of your age or an underlying health condition, or you can't remove the face covering without the assistance of others, you would be exempt from the ordinance. There are civil penalties. This is modeled after neighboring municipalities. So someone who would fail to comply with this would be guilty of a civil infraction, punishable by a fine of not more than $25. So it could be less than 25. Person who fails to comply with Section 2 would be guilty of a civil infraction, and that would be the business owners. So if the business owners are not requiring their employees to wear face coverings, they would be faced with civil infraction punishable by a fine of not more than $100. We would recommend, but not require, any person entering a public building or private building into which the public is invited that are not included in the pharmacy grocery store section, that we would recommend but not require them to wear a face covering while in the establishment. And we would encourage proprietors to adopt a policy that require their employees and visitors to those buildings to wear face coverings while having a face-to-face interaction. That's pretty much it. Again, this is an emergency ordinance, so it would automatically expire on the 61st day after its enactment. And I'd like for us to be able to move this on to council for consideration.
Okay, I'll make a motion to forward this, emergency ordinance regarding face coverings to full council for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzner. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second from the mayor. Any further discussion?
I have just one, I guess, comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Sort of question, if you don't mind. I know this follows the Greenville County, and I know that when I go into a grocery store or any other, local business, retail, I wear my mask and I do it for me, really. But I guess my question is, and even for Greenville, how do they enforce the fine? I mean, unless there's a police officer in the grocery store that sees someone without a mask, I mean, how does it get enforced? I mean, that's my only thing. I agree with, we should be doing this right now for everyone.
I mean, we're not gonna, not to speak for Chief Turner, and not to speak for the city administrator, but we're not gonna, reallocate police resources to, snoop down aisles at anywhere within our historic grocery store district, to see if anybody's wearing a mask. I think it would be more of a situation where if somebody was being brazen about it, and law enforcement officer happened to be around, the law enforcement officer more than likely is gonna say, just put on a mask. And only escalate it if it gets to a level of belligerence. I mean, certainly that's not what would be included in the ordinance as enforceability, but I think from a practical standpoint, Mr. Madden, wouldn't you agree that that's probably how it would go down realistically?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mayor.
Just for notes, I think we probably should fix this before it goes to full council, but on page 11, under the whereas on March _ insert, I think that was the 23rd, we approved that, state of emergency for the city of Mauldin. Then on page 12, under 3, any person who is unable to safely wear a mask, a face covering due to age. In the municipal association's model ordinance, they did define age 2 and, for children under insert age cutoff, provided adults accompany children age 2 through at age cutoff. Do we need to consider putting some definition of age of that one?
Mr. Madden, can you, when it gets to full council, have that as a prepared amendment?
Yes.
And then last, on page 13, in the long paragraph before, furthermore, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentence up from the red. To enforce the social distancing requirements, social distance has not been defined. My suggestion would be to drop the word social distancing just to enforce the requirements of the ordinance within the business. That may clear that one up also, instead of trying to go back and define this. I didn't see social distance defined anywhere in this one. So if we drop those 2 words, I think it would still read.
What would you think of generally accepted social distancing requirements of 6 feet? Then we are spelling it out.
You are spelling that out, but
I'm saying if we do an amendment there that spells it out to 6 feet.
Yeah, but our ordinance is directly addressing mask. It's not addressing nowhere in here is it mentioned social distancing as a position in here also. I don't disagree. If you want to add 6 feet anywhere, that's fine. I'll support that. But to use the word social distancing and not have it defined and declared, just a little techie thing. It is in the municipal association model. Just food for thought if you want to look at it before we get it to full.
How about if we change the wording to reinforce social distancing recommendations of 6 feet separation? Got that one, Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. Is there any additional discussion? All right, we'll have those amendments ready when this goes to council should this pass. So with no further discussion, all in favor of moving this on? All right. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And it's going to council. Is there public comment? Anybody online for us, Mr. Madden?
There's not. No.
All right. Committee concerns? Hearing none. What do we hear on adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned at 8:09 p.m. Thank you all.
Fifth committee meeting in the evening, Public Works Committee meeting, we're convening at 8:09 p.m. Present is myself, temporarily chairing the Public Works Committee, Mayor Mary, committee members Ms. King and Mr. Reynolds are here, along with our city administrator, Mr. Madden, and our Public Works Director, Matt Lee. Got it. Okay, first order of business is anyone on?
No, nobody.
Our first item is public comment, any public comment for consideration of the Public Works. Hearing none, the reading and approval of minutes of the June 1st, 2020 meeting. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Motion to approve as submitted.
You have a motion, Mr. King.
Second.
Second, Mr. Reynolds. Any discussions, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Public Works Committee meeting minutes of June 1st, 2020 are approved as submitted. Departmental reports. Mr. Madden, you have anything for us?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bleeman.
We're just 6 days in. I haven't spent any money yet, but we're anxious. We're certainly anxious to spend some money.
Let me introduce you to Mr. Brown.
And you guys had given us a lot of great things in the budget. Our guys are very excited, and so when we get to a point where we can acquire some of those budgeted items, will be much appreciated.
Okay, any questions?
She's not.
No questions from Mr. Bleeman. All right, thank you. Unfinished business, we have none. Under new business, a request from Ben Brook Townhouses to amend sanitation ordinance 34-5. It's on page 5 through 7 of your agenda packet. Mr. Bleeman, you want to?
Certainly. I recently had gone out to Benbrook. Some of my guys, because public works employees have been riding the back of the trash trucks. They've been conditioned to, when something's wrong, to bring it to my attention. Something that couldn't be provided with the inmates. Well, they had made comments about when they went to this apartment complex, they were turning cans over and hypodermic needles were coming out. And that's a safety hazard, because anyone who's diabetic or uses needles knows how to dispose of them properly. Next time I inform them to get their sanitation supervisor out there to photograph it, get the code enforcement, and let's go through the proper procedures so that we can cite them. When we did, the gentleman who's in charge of the HOA became combative, standoffish to both the sanitation supervisor and code enforcement officer. At this point, I got involved. When I looked into it, the first thing I noticed was that we provide a level of sanitation service to that townhome community that is unlike anything else we do in the city. And it is currently in violation of our city ordinances. And as I delved further into it and started looking through the historical record, what happened was in 2008, when the city decided to do away with the dumpster ordinance, they provided notice, and the same gentleman who's still the HOA president petitioned the city administrator at the time for a 90-day extension because finances, trying to get someone else to haul in the dumpster, and ultimately just because of his, let's see, he's
Persistent.
persistent, passionate and persistent. Ultimately what happened was, it appears the city just found it easier not to deal with him. And so for the next 5 years, the city continued to pick up, the dumpster at this townhome community free of charge. In 2013, Public Works Director Mike Lambert identified this discrepancy and once again, dealt with Mr. HOA president, who was persistent and passionate, and words were exchanged, deals, variances, everything that should not have been approved or didn't have the authority to be approved was approved. And ultimately, the dumpster was pulled out and 9 trash cans were put into the dumpster area. And that's what's been going on for the last 7 years, and they've added more cans. So when I go out there, they have a dumpster area, cans crammed in there, and there's only one way in to this community. So in order for our trash truck to dump the cans, my driver stops in Miller, in the curve, and then backs all the way through the townhome community to where a dumpster would be and empties these cans. I met with the HOA president. He's persistent and passionate. And he feels that he was promised sanitation services for free in perpetuity for the community. That was an agreement from the past city administrator. He can't provide this in writing. He blames us for losing the paperwork. So ultimately, we're at an impasse. We could continue violating our ordinance. Our ordinance stipulates that these communities like this has to have the cans at curbside. So they would have to bring the cans out to Miller Road, which would be appropriate and be in accordance with our ordinance. Or we could continue to violate our ordinance and do this back up into the community and continue this path. The city administrator and I have discussed this at length. In a city, everyone should be treated the same. Everyone should be treated equally. People shouldn't get special treatment, no matter how persistent or passionate they are. The same rules should apply to everybody. So we're bringing this before you because we're looking to maintain city ordinances. And from the past experiences with the HOA president, this isn't the last you'll hear of this. Especially you, and you. It's what we're gonna do. But I wanted to bring it to your attention and give you all the historical background and explain why we're doing it. It presents a safety hazard to my employees. They're still disposing of hypodermic needles inappropriately, which, if you've ever tipped a trash can, bags of trash will fall into that hopper, but loose things in cans will ping and pong and fly out. And the second one of my guys gets stuck with a hypodermic needle, I don't even want to go down that road. I don't want to have that thought exercise of what's going to happen. But the police and code enforcement are involved, and we'll continue down this path where we're going to hold them to the same standard, just like everyone else should be. And we're going to request that you guys support us in this decision.
Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you. I read through this twice because I thought I was missing something. So thanks for confirming for me that we're simply following our city ordinance. And as you state, I'm not one for making exceptions either. So for one, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. So if we do get calls or emails, we're aware of it. I never like to be blindsided by something, but I totally support your recommendation and Mr. Madden's recommendation to continue to follow the city ordinance. That's my position on this.
So then we don't need to make a motion and send it to council or anything like that. We just need to address that you need to follow the ordinance.
That would be correct.
I'm pretty confident I remember this issue coming up.
Yes, your name is in the file.
Yeah, I remember this, and I think it came up because it was something to do with
The dumpster.
eliminating dumpster services for trucks and whatever. Clearly, it didn't go away, but
No, and for 5 years.
okay.
Are townhomes traditionally serviced by the city?
So in our ordinance, the way it's single family, multifamily, townhomes, and then it says comma, and apartment complexes with less than 9 units. So the way I read it, because there's that comma, the less than 9 units only applies to apartments. It doesn't apply to everything else in the sentence. All right. Now, there are plenty of townhome communities on Miller Road that we do service, and they have individual cans and they bring them curbside, and we service them fine. I've gone through with my sanitation department and looked to see if there were any other communities that were set up like Bentbrook that were doing this. And they are that white whale. They're the one that, there's nothing else like it in the city. The townhomes are owned by individual property owners, but the way it's constructed is like an apartment complex. So it was, someone designed it like an apartment complex. They put a dumpster area, but then they individually sold each unit. So they're townhomes and they're tax-paying residents. But it's still, there's only one road in, there's no, entrance and exit. And there's no turnaround for a trash truck. So it's back in.
If we was to move to single, what is it, one-armed bandit, whatever we're calling this, and he pulls in there and they line their trash cans up in that little cul-de-sac area. I drove down it yesterday and saw the dumpster. It's kind of a circle around it, and the dumpster's a portion of it, not a whole lot. That they can line the cans up through there, or the dump, to the edge of the dumpster, and the one-armed bandit can pick them up, or the backloaders could also do that. And there's not the ability for the truck to be able to back into the empty parking lot spots and make a turn and come back out.
It's hit or miss. I mean, it's, if you go to certain times of the day, especially in the morning, because that's right near the shop, so it's usually the first place you get when you leave on the trash route. Everyone's still home, so the parking lot's just full of cars. You could say, well, do it at the end of your route, but then you're guessing whether or not if you pull in, that you're gonna be able to turn around.
Is there, if we go back to the street level, is there room on the street sidewalk area to line up the trash cans?
Certainly, because that was one of the other things that we cited them for, because they just started dumping bulk items and everything street side, and they had created this pile.
Right. So there is room to line them up on that, and then you're stopping a truck in the middle of Miller Road at the bottom of a hill and in a curve. Kind of, it's almost a little bit out of the curve. So that's what the ordinance calls for.
That's correct.
Yeah. I think it's fair for everybody.
It is. I mean, the other way to go about it, and I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but in 2008, the city told them to get someone else to haul his dumpster.
I think that is an option that would have to be explained to them, like you're either gonna line them up and we're gonna pick them up, like everybody else, or you can contract with a private service to come in, and they do have trucks that are variable sizes that can dump dumpsters and.
Yeah, unfortunately, just our trucks aren't set up to fit dumpsters.
Which I don't think we provide dumpsters.
No, not at all.
Not since 08.
And not since 08. And the one-armed bandit, it just happens to be the largest truck in our fleet, and we've already encountered situations, it can't turn around in cul-de-sacs. And so you're ultimately backing that thing down, one-way streets, or dead end
You want to
streets.
give the homeowner association's number to the previous mayors? You can talk to him, so.
I was thinking you.
I wasn't here.
You might still have some of them bags throw as you go.
That's right. It's traffic.
Or pay as you throw, something like that.
That was bad.
So, there's no action for the committee other than, this committee recommends that, we enforce the ordinance as written.
Well, I think the simple thing here is Mr. Cleveland's right. If something happens with one of our trash guys while servicing an area that we're not in all week, creates a liability issue for the city. So
And I think-
consistency is what we need.
And then historically, in one of my past positions doing this exact same thing, over time, trash trucks are 56,000 pounds of dead rolling weight. They tend to destroy parking lots because parking lots are not constructed the same standards as roadways. And I've had apartment complexes come and say the city is responsible to repave our parking lot because your trash truck tore it up. That is
Is there any ordinance about the proper disposal of hypodermic needles that code enforcement needs to? I mean, I know everybody's got a safety container. They're in red that you're supposed to put those things in.
And so right now they're working under the assumption it's drug use. It's not like a insulin kind of thing.
Oh, that's what you do, you kind of need.
No.
Is there any, we don't have anything in the
No.
ordinance about proper disposal of?
Oh, we don't dispose of hazardous waste.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Right, that's what I'm, again, I guess I didn't use the right terminology. Hazardous waste is the hypodermic needles.
That's correct.
And there is a law about the proper disposal of those, and it doesn't fit what
That's
our
correct.
sanitation people are.
Yeah, it's on the website. It's no sharps, no hazardous waste. The landfill rules stipulate that type of waste goes to a specific area in the landfill that we don't transport waste to.
I don't think any action is needed, other than we support you with your endeavors to
Again.
enforce the ordinance.
I still support.
Today.
Mr. Reynolds stated he would like you to enforce the ordinance. We all would. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We good on that one?
Yeah.
All right, back to public comment. Hearing none, committee concerns.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. King, sorry.
thank you. That's okay. I know everybody's ready to get home. No, I always start out with not really a concern, but more of a comment, or I guess in this case, it's a question. And it has to do, because we never really discussed it at a committee level, but the Stormwater Advisory Committee, the application that recently came out, which I am perfectly okay with. My question is, I guess my statement is, I'm okay with it as long as, I guess, will there be plans for city staff or city resources to be used within this committee? Or is it simply just, and I know it's in the beginning stages and it's hard to see into the future sometimes with that crystal ball, but, or are you foreseeing this as a committee made up of our residents that are knowledgeable and concerned in this area, with you kind of being, leading them through the process?
Actually, it's formed as a group, it is not a committee.
Okay.
So it would be a citizen advisory group. As far as rough cut is our first kickoff, will be introduce everybody to each other, suggest that they elect a leader, if you will, and a gentleman who has years and years of experience with Bremen County Stormwater, who's a resident of Nowood, has agreed that he would be involved with it and lend any expertise he has as well as citizen. And then hopefully we get a representation that will represent various areas around our city. Mr. Madden and I will try to set up a series of meeting agendas. We're going to bring in potential governmental agencies that have oversight over waterways, stormwater runoff. That could be the county stormwater department, that can be DHEC, that can be Army Corps engineer, and all those, and lay those out that will be coming in. City staff as well as us would be available on an invitation to that. I would not plan on being an active participant in all those. Let's say there's 12 meetings, I wouldn't expect to be at 12 meetings, expect them to conduct themselves. The idea is to try to keep it to a workable group, 8 to 12 maybe, and depending on, hopefully we have better volunteerism than we have on some of our others, because we heard the areas. I know several gentlemen who this council has heard from before or have expressed an interest on being on that. And it's the whole idea is to quantify, if they can, where they can hear what the laws are, what the challenges are where the city stands, the county stands and everything. And then what they, from a citizen standpoint, would like to see us do. And once that's quantified, there'll probably be a presentation when Mr. Madden says, you know, if you want to make that recommendation to council, here's some potential funding sources for it, because it's not in our general fund revenues to do what they'll probably be asked to do. And he'll present various funding things, and then they can compile all that, and then the idea then would be to come back to council saying, you know, their opinion is these are issues, this is things we'd love to see done, but we don't want to pay for them. But can you do this and this and this? And so I think that would be the way I would see it going. And we reworded a lot of it to be sure that it was not committing city staff to have to attend those meetings and guide this group at all. The invited in speakers to educate our citizens. There's a lot of misinformation out
Sure.
there. There's charts in my office that Mr. Deerhall developed that shows water still flows downhill. And Mauldin is between two drainage basins. And when they see that, I would expect them to see the logic and then try to figure out the best way to approach that. So that was the reason. I didn't want to see it get tangled up in government.
Good.
So that's why we moved it into a group setting, and hopefully we'll pull together, I'm guessing 8 to 12 meetings with a series of experts that can provide guidance and information along to them, and then their leader, he doesn't know he's a leader yet, but the gentleman who's agreed to guide it would be willing to give the feel of his expertise, what he encountered in, I think it was the Army Corps engineer, and what he's encountered in Greenville County for 30-something years, 20 or 30 years of stormwater management, and from the boots on the ground to guiding it. And Mr. Lehman is familiar with the gentleman in Greenville County. So that was kind of where we were trying to head with it, kind of thing. And then COVID came along. And
yes.
It hasn't gone as quickly.
Well, thank you for that brief explanation. I guess that pretty much answered my question. I just did not want to see staff being bogged down on a monthly basis, you know, or another monthly meeting that you would have to commit to. So, sounds good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. King. No concerns while you're on adjournment.
You're welcome.
Adjourned.
Mr. Reynolds, ready to
Second.
Second, Ms. King, any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
8:35. Last meeting. Go home. Go there, take that.
Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. Madden. Thank you, Chief.